Hello guys, welcome to DevMaster Hub, freeCodeCamp responsive web design series, learning HTML by building a cat photo app. Today we're gonna start with step 41 to 50. Please consider subscribe to the channel with the bell notification. You already know. Let's get it. In order for a form data to accessed by a location specified in action attribute, you must give the text field a name attribute and assign it a value to represent the data being submitted. Here's an example of an input element with a name attribute. This is the example code. So input element with the name attribute. Now the question is add a name attribute with the value cat photo URL, okay, to the text field. So now we're gonna add the name attribute. So the name attribute gonna be equal, okay, the cat photo URL. Okay, so now we're gonna submit it. Okay, now it's good. So now step 42, placeholder text is used to give people a hint about what kind of information to enter into the input. Here's an example of an input element with a placeholder set to example Joe, John Doe, John Doe. For example, this is the input with the placeholder. So now they told you to give a placeholder. Cat photo URL has a placeholder. So we're gonna write the placeholder. So the placeholder gonna be equal to the value cat, okay, photo URL. Okay, so now I add the placeholder and I'm gonna check it. Okay, now it's good. Step 43, to prevent a user submitting your form when required information is missing, you need to add the required attribute to an input element. There's no need to set a value to a required attribute. Instead, you add the word required to the input element, making sure there is space between it and other attribute. So now I can add the required attribute. The required attribute, so I give it in capital later, so it's not gonna work. Okay, the required attribute here is gonna make the input required. So now we are in the input right here. So when I click it, yes, so it's good. Step 44, the button element is used to create a clickable button. Add a button element with the text submit below the input. The default behavior is click a form a button without any attribute, submit the form to the location specified and the form action attribute. So now after that I supposed to add a button bu. Okay, so the button attribute is gonna be, so now the text between the attribute is submit. Okay, so now I add it. So let's see the button attribute here. Okay, it's submit. Okay, step 45, even though you added your button below the text element, They appear next to each other on the page. That's because both input and button elements are inline elements, which don't appear on a new line. The button element added with submit will submit the form by default. However, relying on default behavior may cause confusion. Add the type attribute with the value submit to the button to make it clear that it is a submit button. So inside of the button element, so I'm gonna have a type attribute with the value submit. Okay, so now make it clear that this button is for submit the form. So yes, it's good. So step 46, you can use radio button for question where you want only one answer out of the multiple option. It is an example of radio button with option of cat. Okay, this is the an input radio button with the option cat. So remember that an input element is a void element. That means it doesn't have a closing tag. Before the text input, add a radio. Before the text input, add a radio button with the option has set indoor. Okay, they say before the text input, add a radio button. This is the text input, but before it, so we're gonna add a radio button. Okay, so I'm gonna add an input. Okay, with the type radio. Okay, radio. So now the text is indoor. Okay, so now let me see what is made. Okay, this is the indoor. Okay, it's good. So now let's go for the step 47. Label element is used to help associate the text with an input element with the input element itself, especially for associative technology like screen readers. Here's an example of label element with the radio button. So I can put the label like that. Good. For the example, click the word cat. Will also select the radio button. Nest the radio button and inside a label element. So now I'm gonna nest it inside a label element, which is a label. So close it, and after at the end, so I'm gonna add the label closing tag. Okay, so it's not changing anything, so it's gonna still be the same. Good. Now step 48, the ID attribute is used to identify specific HTML element. Each ID attribute, each ID value must be unique from all other ID value for the entire page. Here's an example of an input element with an ID attribute. Okay, input with the ID. So add an ID attribute with the value indoor to the radio button When element have multiple attribute, the order of the attribute doesn't matter. Okay, they told you to add an ID attribute with the value indoor to the radio button. So now I can add the ID attribute with the word indoor. Okay, to the radio button. Okay, now it's good. Step 49, create another radio button below the first one. Nest it inside a label element with outdoor has a label text. Give the radio button an ID attribute with outdoor has value. So now they say after that I supposed to add another one with the label element. So now you put the label element first, and after inside of the label element I gonna put the text of outdoor the text, and now I gonna put the input, which is the input element. Okay, with the type of input. Okay, I put the type of radio. Yeah, and after the type of radio I supposed to put an ID with the ID should be outdoor. Okay, so now it's the same. Okay, good. Now step 50, notice that both radio buttons can be selected at the same time. Make it so selecting one radio button automatically deselect the other. Both buttons must have the same name with the same value. Here's an example of two radio buttons with the same name attribute. Okay, radio button name mail. So now add a name attribute with the value indoor outdoor to both radio buttons. So now they say whenever I click here, okay, if I click here too, it's gonna be two selected, so it's not automatically deselect the other one. So to do that I suppose to add a name for the first radio button. The name will be indoor dash outdoor. Okay, so what I can do, I can uh, copy this, Control C, and paste it here. Okay, that means they both have the same name. So now if I click it again here and this one, it's automatically deselect the other one. Okay, so now when I check it, it's good. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you will be always notified for any video that I release. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.